Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info. I'm talking with Michael Feingold, what's become our annual discussion about New York theatre trends on a snowy evening. We've just come away from seeing Jitney that I thought was tremendous by August Wilson, and I have a feeling Michael's going to say exactly the same. Welcome.
Thank you.
This is perhaps an unusual time in New York because within a few days from today there'll be the inauguration of Donald Trump, with whatever impact that has on the city, the country and theatre. I know that, without wishing to give secrets away, there's going to be an article in Village Voice this coming Wednesday about exactly this topic.
Well, actually, there's going to be a big package in the Village Voice about art in the age of Trump, and I have written an article about what the theatre is likely to be in that time. So I don't think I'm giving anything away because it's all hypothetical and projection in any case.
So what are you hypothesizing and projecting?
Well, let's go back a little bit to the BT, or before Trump, and think about what the theater has been immediately. And what's interesting to me is it's almost as if we were gearing up for him, because the theater was getting to be in a very good and very exciting phase. There are right now 3 musicals running on Broadway, all successfully, that I like very much, which is extraordinarily rare for me in these times.
Okay, I'm trying to read your mind, and I can think of 2 of them immediately. I'll see if I'm right. Go on, tell me the
3. Don't read my mind. I'll speak my mind. One of them is obviously Hamilton. One of them is Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet.
Okay, so that's my 2. So what's the third one?
And the third one is Dear Evan Hansen.
Right.
All of these musicals began off-Broadway. Dear Evan Hansen actually began off-Broadway and has gone through several stages of development. Actually, now that I take that back. Dear Evan Hansen began in a resident theater in Washington, D.C., and The Great Comet, as we call it for short, began off-Broadway at a small theater called Ars Nova, and has gone through multiple stages of development. And there is a 4th musical playing in town, which is The Band's Visit, based on an Israeli movie, which is at the Atlantic Theater. This is with a score by David Yazbek, who is known for The Full Monty and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. I knew I would think of the name of it if I paused long enough. He's known for fairly popular commercial Broadway musicals, and this is not like either of them, and is as fascinating as it is innovative. So and they're talking about moving that to Broadway as well. So there are these musicals which are very much antithetical to the spirit of Trump and the Republican Congress and the hideous cabinet he's proposing.
They're also intelligent musicals, and
they're also very intelligent musicals. They're based on the life of Alexander Hamilton, a complex study in adolescent psychology, including the topic of teenage suicide, a passage from Tolstoy's War and Peace, and relations between Israelis and Egyptians in the middle of that situation. So all of these are very human, emotional pieces about very serious, weighty, intellectually weighty subjects, and the treatment is fulfilling on both fronts. This is extraordinary for that number of musicals in this short a time. And to add to it, there seem to be a great many plays either off-Broadway or coming to Broadway from off-Broadway, which tackle serious subjects in an intelligent and gripping way. Jitney, which is a revival, which in fact is August Wilson's earliest play, is the most conventional of the lot, and it certainly isn't a conventional play. But you have the humans, you have coming up in quick succession in the next few months Lynn Nottage's Sweat, which is about industrial workers in Reading, Pennsylvania, and is quite a complex piece and has a documentary basis in interviews and research, and a very exciting piece of theater as well. You have J.T. Rogers' Oslo, which was playing in the small Newhouse Theater at Lincoln Center and is moving next month up to the Beaumont. And this is a historical play about the people involved in the Israeli-Palestinian peace accords in the, what is it, early 1990s. I'm bad on dates, but it's under the prime ministership of Yitzhak Rabin. And of course, one of the final footnotes to that play was Rabin's assassination, which is a very bitter stroke for me. But this is an extraordinary play with some very powerful performances in it, and a very even-handed, intelligent play politically that doesn't preach. And you have Paul Vogel's Indecent, which is a very touchy and a very inventive and striking play that's played off-Broadway early last summer and is moving to Broadway in, I think, March, about the suppression on Broadway of the Yiddish play God of Vengeance. This happened about 100 years ago, a play by Sholem Asch, which contains lesbianism and as well as a number of melodramatic elements. And Paula Vogel writes a play about the circumstances surrounding it, which is, to say the least, highly political and contentious. So it's as if somehow the same forces that put Donald Trump into office, if he doesn't commit a nakedly impeachable offense to prevent him from taking the office, which is entirely possible, the same historical movement has evoked all these counterblasts, and that's like a prelude to what is going to happen once the Republican move to roll everything back and destroy sanity in the face of changing reality starts to take effect. There is certainly going to be a great deal more political satire in the theater.
Just to stop you for a second,
yes,
to
okay.
recap on that selection, because I think you named probably 9 or 10 plays, musicals there, and with the exception of Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812 by Dave Malloy, which was based on a chunk of War and Peace, 70 pages or so of War and Peace, everything, which is entirely new writing in itself, everything is new writing. And back to the good old days, all that you got were jukebox musicals, you got plays based on films, etc.
There were always some original musicals.
But not to this extent. Suddenly there's a real outburst of new writing. It's great stuff.
Absolutely. And the one musical in that lot, which is based on a film, is based on an Israeli film, not a highly popular American film. And the script of it by the playwright Itamar Moses is very different from the standard, well, we'll hire the screenwriter of the original and he'll take over all his original dialogue and just cut it down and stick songs into it.
And also, for the most part, and I may be missing a little bit, these have not gone for star casting either, so they really are selling themselves on the quality of the writing, the quality of directing,
Absolutely.
and acting from stage actors or unknowns.
Well, what we've really found is that they make stars, and that's the fascinating part. The Great Comet has a star, which is Josh Groban, but he's a recording star who has never done a major role on the stage before, and I'm here to tell you he's spectacularly good in the role. He has the acting gift for it. Dear Evan Hansen stars a very young actor named Ben Platt, who has had some small roles in movies, and I guess must have some stage experience to be that good, but it's another spectacular performance. And there's a young woman in the band's visit named Christina Lenk, who, in my view, is absolutely a showstopper. I think I'm not the only one who thinks that. So these shows are doing what musicals did in the late 1920s and early 30s, when people like Rodgers and Hart and the Gershwins were working with young talents and they were creating stars rather than simply building on stars' reputations. So that's fascinating too. that there's a lot of new creativity going on, and very funnily, The Great Comet, which is the only one of these things that's based on a familiar work, is the most innovative of the lot in a great many ways, including musically, because Dave Malloy uses this extraordinary musical vocabulary that ranges all the way from bluegrass to Philip Glass. Oh, there's a thought. The history of American music from bluegrass to Philip Glass. I don't know. Perhaps someone else will write it. Anyway.
And then, having got the music and the story, somehow he and Rachel Chavkin got together, who was an unlikely director to direct a Broadway music. He and Rachel Chavkin got together.
Well, but they had been collaborating on 3 previous pieces.
But to direct a Broadway musical, she probably wasn't the obvious choice, and it's just worked perfectly.
No, but it wasn't an obvious choice for him to be writing a Broadway musical either, and I don't know that they think of it as a Broadway musical. Nobody has a more innovative gift for environment or spatial relations. I don't know how to phrase it than Rachel Chavkin. She is really one of the most brilliant young directors around in terms of her physical sense as well as her directorial vision. It's just a great pleasure to watch. But there are, David Cromer, who's mainly directed serious plays, is the director of The Band's Visit, and Michael Greif, who has sponsored a great many new musicals that were successful, including Rent and Next to Normal, as well as directing a great many serious plays, has done some really remarkable stuff with Dear Evan Hansen. So again, it's a lot of young talent moving in on a variety of fronts, and there is a great deal more of breakout poised to be going on.
So then we come on to political theatre going forwards.
What will happen when Trump and his crew start actually having an effect? And that's, first of all, my prediction is there's going to be a lot more satire. I think it's noteworthy that the people who've attracted attention on TV as satiric incarnations of Trump and Melania, Alec Baldwin and Laura Benanti, are both very well-known stage actors in New York, both of them with a string of awards behind them and a lot of stage technical accomplishment. I think you're going to be seeing them. I expect there will be a lot of benefits and fundraisers for all the charitable organizations that Republicans are against, like various ecological organizations and organizations like Planned Parenthood and the National Abortion Rights League. So there will be competition for the role of who's going to be the best satirist, the best impressionist, who's going to write the most scathing attacks on what is being plotted against us legislatively, because we're really now at a point when the congressional majority and the sitting president, and God help us, possibly the Supreme Court, are against what most Americans want, and they seem to be set on destroying whatever can actually improve our lives or preserve the planet. And the likelihood that these people's one-sided view of things will get us into some kind of truly horrible major international crisis is enormous. So we're all gearing up to face that. And probably there will be a good deal of satiric writing, as I said. There will probably be a good deal of documentary theater, which is something that has lain fallow for a long time here, but it always crops up during periods of crisis. And as I said, the play Oslo by J.T. Rogers is likely to be the prelude to a good deal more in that area. There will probably be batches of rediscoveries. As someone who has translated a number of Bertolt Brecht plays, I can tell you that I have already had 5 directors say to me, by the way, do you have an adaptation of Arturo Ui? And I have to say, no, you'll have to use the one by George Tabori, or you can commission me to write a new one.
The moustache may need to move upwards a little bit onto the top of the head.
Well, I don't know. Trump has the hair.
Yes,
so.
a slightly different place. Britain in the 80s became more conservative in every sense, and the theatre world tended to be more conservative because the economics suggested to producers the way to make money was to do bland, predictable things that were going to make money. So you were likely to get star-cast jukebox musicals, movies with stars turned on the stage, etc. Is that going to be a trend here, do you think?
No, I think it's going to be quite the other way, because we have this insanely divided country where the more hidebound people in the middle of the country seem to be the supporters of the Trump administration, and the 2 coasts where a great deal of creative activity is generated are the areas where most people do not approve of what's going on politically and want to counter it. That has always been the case to some extent on Broadway. It was very much in the 1930s. But I think rather than looking for bland, the producers are going to be out looking for exciting, looking for cutting edge, looking for the thing that will be the next Hamilton and touch a political nerve, as Hamilton already has with this administration. I don't want to get into that incident, thank you. And, of course, all the actors in America want to be as highly overrated as Meryl Streep. So there will be a lot of competition to get involved with this cutting-edge work. One analogy I make in the article is that I remember very much from the 1960s when actors whom nobody had ever heard of, Stacy Keach and Rue McClanahan, became quite famous off-Broadway, playing roles that were parodies of Lyndon Johnson and Lady Bird in a Shakespearean spoof by Barbara Garson called McBird, which was about the Kennedy assassination and Johnson's escalation of the Vietnam War. It was written originally as a sketch to be performed at protest rallies, and it evolved into a full-length play, which then there were many, many college productions of, that ran off-Broadway for about a year and made stars of these 2 people. Justifiably, they were brilliant performances. Things like that are likely to happen again. People finding old plays that strike a chord now are likely to happen again. The other play besides Arturo Ui that I'm expecting a great many people to start thinking about is Jarry's Ubu Roi, or Ubu Rex if you prefer, because the comparison there to Trump is almost inevitable. But I'm expecting there will be new plays as well, and there will be a lot of concern on every front and with every issue. There will be feminist concern. There will be concern about African Americans, about Muslims, about Mexicans and Latinos generally, about voting rights, about schools, about gays, about, whatever issue you can think of. If there is some way to better things, the general Republican policy is against it. If there is some way to make things worse, the general Republican policy is for it. And that automatically means large numbers of people involved with creating theater in this country are going to find themselves taking a creative stance against the administration.
So it all sounds very good theatre-wise. What about the economics? Are there going to be problems? Is funding going to disappear, or actors not going to afford to live?
Well, that is the issue. You see, unlike Britain, where the Arts Council has been incredibly supportive and a very important part of the arts scene, even under a conservative government, the Republicans have been trying to defund and remove subsidized arts or arts subsidy consistently for decades. It isn't a new movement on their part, and this administration will probably be able to find a way to do away with it. The good side of that is that although the National Endowment has had an important effect in giving its imprimatur, and maybe some big institutions like museums or opera houses may find themselves forced to struggle a little, it hasn't played a very important part in the performing arts, and the private foundations and the state government offices that have arisen to take up the slack during this period of constant Republican pressure to diminish the National Endowment. Those groups tend to be equally with us and against the administration. So the likelihood is that the support will be sustained within the limits to which it can be sustained. And something like Hamilton becoming a huge success, or even a gigantic success, actually, generates more funds for the public sector theaters that produced it, and it generates a desire to do more in that area, even among commercially minded people.
Well, one of the long-term trends that may be diminishing already, I'm noticing it slightly less, is overseas companies being brought across with productions wholesale to the States. So I was out in Brooklyn last night to see Druid's awesome 20th anniversary production of Beauty Queen of Lannan.
Mm.
Someone's put a lot of money into bringing that across.
Which I haven't seen yet, but...
Oh, you'll enjoy it, I'm sure. Certainly hope so. And the Don Mars Tempest has come across,
yes.
Etc., etc.
I don't know that there's been a diminution. That has been a steady, small-scale thing. Not, such productions are important to New York because they give us a view of what is happening artistically in the rest of the world. But they also tend to be marginalized. This is especially true of productions from the European continent or from Asia because of the language barriers involved. For instance, Cate Blanchett, who is, of course, a big international star, has previously appeared on the New York stage in productions imported from the Sydney Theatre Company, of which she is a key member. She's previously appeared at Brooklyn Academy and at New York City Center, which is a public building and a nonprofit organization. She is now, however, for the first time making her Broadway debut with this company in The Present, which is an adaptation of Chekhov's Platonov, and in my view, a piece that's not really very good because Chekhov never finished it in the first place, and the adaptation is problematic, but it's wonderful to see Cate Blanchett. The point I'm making, I think, is that foreign companies have always been important to theater practitioners in New York and theater aficionados, but they have never been important as an audience maker on Broadway, except when they were presented here as commercial ventures, like The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, yes, or War Horse or something of that sort, where the point is, here is a prestigious British play or a well-regarded British production. Let's see if it will become a quote-unquote Broadway hit. And that's really the extent to which foreign productions have an influence here. So I don't think that's going to diminish, but on the other hand, it was never a very major part. There have been fashions at points for, the English do all these things so much better, they do this better and that better and so on, which is, the correct answer, of course, is that when the English are being fine artists, they do this better, and when we're being fine artists, we do it better. The talent is not limited to one country, but the idea that the country is the controlling principle of, everything we do is perfect because we're English is nonsense, and the English know that better than we do, as they have to sit through all the imperfect parts. And furthermore, they know the imperfect parts of the well-received productions which come over here, and the people who are in love with English accents can't tell which are the good actors and which are the ones who can't cross the stage without bumping into the furniture.
The season is just opening now, so we've just seen Jitney. There are
No. The season is half over. We've just been through the intermission of the season. Jitney is the first production of the new half of the season.
The new half of the season is open. I stand corrected. What are you particularly looking forward to? What's whetting appetite at the moment?
I never look forward to anything because I'm over 70, and if it's going to be good, it'll be good, and if it's going to be bad, it'll be bad. And if it's going to be the play I've seen 37 times, I can just pray that I'll be able to sit through it one more time. There are 10 major American plays from which I'd really like a rest, and they're the ones people do incessantly over and over again.
You mentioned the front page, are you, which I've just seen?
Oh, the front page, of course, it belongs to the earlier half of the season.
Yes.
The front page was well enough done, and I enjoyed it. It was my 5th front page, I think. It had some very good performances. One of them is by Jefferson Mays, and I'm impatient for it to close because he plays a central role in Oslo. In fact, he plays the Norwegian person who is the linchpin of the negotiations. So the sooner the front page closes, the sooner Oslo can get back on its feet, which is a play I really like. I don't dislike the front page. It's a great fun thing as an old play, and it was fun to watch all these people, some of whom are doing very well. But, when you've seen it, I don't know that it's the old play which adds that much to this time. Some plays from the past come and strike you with the force of a revelation. Others do not.
I think this one reveals that the likes of Jefferson Mays and Nathan Lane are wonderful comic actors, but maybe we knew that already.
Yes, that's the point. We knew that it reveals things we knew already. That sometimes happens when a play has been revived too much. So, I don't know. There are things I'm curious about that are coming up. I'm curious at the idea that someone wants to make a musical out of this movie Amélie, which I know nothing about. I'm curious at the idea that someone thinks the rivalry of Elizabeth Arden and Helena Rubinstein would be worth making into a musical called War Paint. Those are things that are coming in. I'm curious to see how these very serious off-Broadway plays will fare on Broadway when everybody has been holding their heads and moaning and saying Broadway won't support a serious play. The out-of-town audience, which is now 2/3 of the audience, doesn't want to come see it. But there is a lot of talk right now about buyer's remorse among the Trump voters in the Midwest. And as they start to see what Trump is really turning out to be, we knew, but they didn't. So they may, in fact, start being hungry for the kind of serious play that will explain to them just how it is they got took.
Sounds like there are fascinating times ahead. Michael Feingold, thank you very much.
You are welcome. Thank you, Philip Fisher.
You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.